Time to look back at some of the stories that made news this past week and look ahead to some stories headed your way in the Oklahoman this weekend. I'm Dave Morris alongside Managing Editor Don McCoy and Sports Editor Ryan Sharp. And gentlemen, welcome into the studio.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for your time. Lots to get into with OU football. That sort of led off the week with big news right there. OU Texas didn't go the Sooners' way. And then job status didn't go Mike Stoops' way.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that happened last Saturday that kind of started the ball rolling. You heard some rumblings at halftime of some very unhappy players and possibly a player storming out of the locker room.
How unusual is that, though?
The upset players, things like that, not at all. And coaches, obviously, you hear stories all the time about guys tearing into players and things like that. But to actually have reports of a guy trying to walk out of the stadium, and I don't know if you're familiar with how the Cotton Bowl's set up, but so the ramp that is famous for the players coming out of and it being split in half and have OU on one side and Texas on the other. When you go up that ramp, OU's locker room is on one side, Texas is on the other. You go right past that, you're in the State Fair at Texas.
So he was going out for a corn dog.
He was going out for a corn dog, one of those corn dog beers, something. He was on his way out the door, and apparently some players had to stop him. Now, there's all kinds of reports and things about what happened to lead to that. Again, started the ball rolling with talks of Mike Stoops. So you get to Sunday, and you start hearing some rumblings that there's a chance that Mike Stoops has been fired or let go or he's stepping down. We had confirmed that by late Sunday evening, that the two were parting ways, one way or the other. So we get to Monday. The school officially announces it, that the school has parted ways with Mike Stoops, so it's a firing. So it was kind of the culmination of several years worth of hand-wringing for the defense for OU. When you've got the Sooners offense just keeps putting up points and points and points and points, the defense has been giving up points and points and points and points. I mean, you give up, 48 points in to Texas, and you've scored 45 of your own. You think that should be enough, and an OU Texas game to come out with a win, and they end up losing by 3. And it frankly wasn't really even that close until about the last 5 minutes of the game. And again, that goes back to the Rose Bowl last year. Other games over the past 3 or 4 years that OU fans have just been torn up over, giving up all these points.
That's how it goes in sports, though. The backup quarterback's always the most popular player, right?
It is.
Same thing. You got to point the finger at somebody, and Sooner fans certainly like to do that.
It is, and everybody kind of thought that when Lincoln Riley took over.
Like a lot of passionate fans like to point fingers, not just Sooner fans.
And everybody kind of thought that when Lincoln Riley took over, that might signal the end of Mike Stoops' tenure at OU, given that Bob had stepped away. And so you have a year and a half or so of Mike Stoops, and of course, I mean, there's always two sides to it. I mean, they made the Rose Bowl. They were in the college football playoff last year, so they're winning games. But it was just too much points and too much hand-wringing over the defense.
Also, that team playing Texas and a loss against Texas.
It is. And you've given up a number of big games. I mean, the Army game is what it is. You gave up a ton of yards. You couldn't get off the field to a team that's middle of the road, let's be honest, but came in with a great game plan and just.
Let's talk mechanics on how you guys cover stuff like this. Barry Trammell spoke with Mike Stoops early in the week. I believe he may have been one of the first reporters to chat with the coach.
He was, and that was actually via text message. So we reached out like anybody would on Sunday, trying to get a hold of these guys, and really couldn't get much of a feel. And we reach out to anybody and everybody that we know that might have some insight into what happened in the locker room on Saturday, what the conversation was like after the game, how all this kind of worked its way out. And so eventually on Monday, Barry gets a hold of Mike Stoops via text message, who confirms that he and Lincoln Riley had a conversation Saturday after the game. He said, Mike Stoops said, I hugged him, I apologized. I said, let's talk Sunday. So they both sleep on it. Sunday they come to the conclusion that it's probably best for them to part ways. Then comes Monday afternoon, and Mike Stoops pops up on the radio, which was an interesting day. His former player works for WWS, Dusty Dvorak, who, if you're unfamiliar with what he's been doing, does a fantastic job on TV. He's one of the best college football analysts around.
He's really good.
He's really good. And no secret, he's close to Mike Stoops. Mike Stoops recruited him. Dusty played for him. They know each other really well. So Dusty has Mike on. Mike kind of lays out his version of how everything happened. There's, again, like I said, rumors of altercations in the locker room at halftime. He kind of puts those to bed, said it didn't happen. there's other hosts on the Animal that have their own versions of what happened, and that's where things got interesting on Monday afternoon. Mike Stoops goes on the air with Jim Schraber, and they kind of butt heads for the better part of about 5-10 minutes.
Makes good radio, though.
It makes good radio. Everybody was talking about it. But even by the end of that conversation, those two had kind of made up and they moved on down the road. So it's been a really interesting week, especially on an off week for OU football. They're not even playing this weekend, but yet that's what we've talked about all week long.
Sooners, it drives traffic on newsok.com. It sells newspapers. It does. It's good for business.
Yeah.
All right, that was not, of course, the only big story this week. Stock markets all over the place. Bring in Don McCoy at this point.
Yeah, you know, the Dow was down 1,300 points over 2 days, but as we sit here, it's recovering. And the storyline that was developed on the thing was, well, people are getting nervous because interest rates are on the rise, and I don't know how much stock to put into that because the Fed has been very slowly increasing interest rates. They've been incredibly transparent about it. None of it's been a surprise. They've even given indication of how this is going to go as we go forward. Nothing actually happened this week on interest rates. So when you look at it in the long view, which is always the best way to look at the stock market, we've been in a 10-year bull market, and there's going to be times like this when there are big falls, and people have built profits over many years, and they want to take those profits, and so they sell. And when the ball starts rolling one way or the other on Wall Street, it keeps rolling that way. It's a momentum that develops, and that's what I think has happened the last couple of days. Now, there may be concerns about interest rates. I mean, there probably are. They're legitimate. There's also concerns about an ongoing trade war, but as that has kind of unfolded, we haven't seen these huge drops. So, you know, it's the old advice: buy and hold, hang on. Don't only check your 401k on the day after the Dow's gone down 800 points. Check it other times. You know, check it once a quarter. So it's recovering today, and we'll see what happens going forward.
As of this morning of this conversation, Dow's up around 200 points. It started a little bit stronger than that, and I guess we should expect these numbers to kind of rebound at the start of earnings season.
Probably. I mean, earnings have been strong lately. American companies got huge advantages from the tax reform that was pushed through in Congress and signed by President Trump. And we've seen strong earnings here with our local companies as well, which is, you know, we're very heavy into energy. Now, the last couple of days, oil prices also took a big slide, but they still
have been growing in recent times.
Yeah, they've been going up, and they are at levels even after this decline that local companies have said in the past, we are profitable at these levels. So, yeah, I would look for pretty good earnings in the upcoming earnings season.
Brent crude around $80 right now. The WTI crude 71.
Yeah, those are pretty good prices.
Well, the stock market, not the only news headline this week. MAPS 4 probably would head to voters late 2020 is when MAPS tax runs out. So that would probably go to the vote next year?
Yeah, late next year would probably when that would happen.
If it does go to.
Yeah, and there's always been an assumption that there would be another MAPS project. You know, MAPS 3 was approved, and that's where the streetcar came from, and Scissortail Park, and other things that are happening right now. And then Oklahoma City voters also approved a 1 cent sales tax to pay for streets and for police and fire, and that's what's going to expire in April of 2020. So if you wanted to have a MAPS 4, which Mayor David Holt said yesterday, we're seeking ideas. What do you want to do next to move Oklahoma City forward with this tax money? You'd look at an election probably in December of 2019. So he has encouraged everyone to pitch in and give ideas of things that they would like to see Oklahoma City do.
What are we hearing on that? I assume it's some sort of transit, maybe looking at mental health. I don't know really how you can.
Yeah, there's a lot of
dive
things,
into that.
A lot of things on the table. You know, more transit, extend, for instance, the streetcars, which haven't even officially started running yet, although we see them driving around on practice runs here downtown. Extending that. Looking at perhaps more of these senior centers, which they've built a couple, and you know, they could have even more, which is popular among voters. And every time that there's a MAPS proposal, the whole thing's a compromise. You know, there's going to be something. There'll probably be something shiny that we really, you know, that we really point to. like there has been in every project, the ballpark or the park.
State fair.
The state fair updates. So there'll be something like that, and there'll be things that they can do that will attract voters, and older voters who vote in big numbers would like senior centers. So there's a lot of ideas out there, and it's interesting that we have this much lead time where the mayor's encouraging people to come forward, and there's going to be, I think, a very public discussion is what he's looking for, and I think that's probably a good idea because people don't like to be surprised about where their tax dollars are going to go.
Previous Oklahoma City mayors have sort of hung their hat on things that came out of the MAPS program, such as Mayor Cornett and the Thunder, and the Thunder finally wrapped up its preseason play this week.
Yeah, finished preseason 3-1. Take that for what it's worth. You saw some things and didn't see some things. One of the things you didn't see was Russell Westbrook.
We're still not going to see Russell Westbrook.
It doesn't sound like it has not been cleared for contact practice yet, so probably still a little ways from
How
that.
much concern are we hearing about that?
Not a ton. I think that they kind of knew where they were. Is he going to start the opener? Probably not. Like I would guess that you're probably looking more towards the home opener, which is here still another couple weeks away. So I haven't seen him. Things you did see during the preseason game, Paul George looked great. Really didn't play a ton. He played first half mostly, but looked really good.
When he did play, he scored.
He scored a bunch of points, and they're going to need him to if Westbrook didn't play him. Steven Adams looked great as always. Some of the new guys looked really good. Dennis Schroeder, the new point guard that they got from Atlanta, looked pretty good, especially working with Adams. And Adams talked a lot about that during preseason camp, the kind of chemistry that he's been working on with Schroeder. And Schroeder's a big pick and roll guy, which is right down Adams' wheelhouse. And so those two played really well together. And some of the other young guys played well too, but still a whole lot of questions. You can't really pull a whole lot of preseason games, especially without Westbrook. But it'll be fun to kind of see where this team ends up. I think the start of the year might be a little bit rough, again, not knowing the health of Westbrook, Terrence Ferguson. You've still got Andre Robertson on the shelf, and that looks like it's going to extend into maybe the first part of next year. I say next year, 19. Because he's not going to be ready for a while after having a setback with his knee injury. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what the first half of the year looks like for the Thunder. I think they're going to kind of feel each other out for a while. If Westbrook gets back, you kind of figure they'll get some wins just by the sheer nature of him willing them to some wins. Other than that, it's going to be Paul George's team for the first stretch.
Should be interesting. I'll get you guys out of here on this. Looking ahead, I know you have some Thunder content coming up.
We do. Our Thunder preview section comes out on Sunday. If you're kind of a kid of the 80s or 90s, which I am, one of the biggest video games at the time was NBA Jam. It was a 2-on-2 game. It came out about the same time as Jordan versus Bird, so you had people that played both. And our assistant sports editor, Jeff Patterson, is a huge video game guy, and so he took our entire section and put it under the theme of that NBA Jam.
Nice.
So all of our mug shots and things like that for that section looked like they came out of that video game. We looked at some of the best duos in NBA, so Westbrook and Paul George and things like that. It's a really fun look at the season, but it also gets into some of the better storylines for the Thunder this year, as well as kind of taking a look at their schedule and the roster as a whole. So it should be pretty fun.
Some boom shakalaka in there?
And, absolutely. Several times it makes an appearance.
Awesome. And on the news side of things, I know our Chris Castile's working right now on a profile piece on one of the gubernatorial candidates.
Yeah, he ran a profile a couple weeks ago on Kevin Stitt, and this coming Sunday we'll have a lengthy profile of Drew Edmondson. We are going to cover politics from every angle as we go forward. We're getting closer and closer to the election. Today is the deadline to register to vote. If you haven't registered yet, I encourage people to do that. And yeah, we're going to have a lot of coverage. And if you want to be an informed voter, you need to pick up the Oklahoman and get on News OK.
You know, I was with Ben Felder last night at OCCC. There was a debate there between Stitt and Edmondson. And Felder spoke with some of the students, high school students from like Weatherford and Edmond were there. And that's what they said. Hey, we're here to be informed. It's interesting to see them engaged.
Yeah, and that's, you know, obviously that's necessary to have a healthy democracy. We've got to have informed voters, and that's what we're all about here at the Oklahoman.
All right, so you can find these stories and plenty more in upcoming editions of the Oklahoman, including this very weekend, and online at newsok.com as well. We should mention OSU on Saturday, K-State.
Yeah, plays at Kansas State, 11 a.m. kick.
All right, all that coverage and more. Guys, thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Dave.